The semifinals of the 2024 Intersecondary School Debate Series, brought to you with kind compliments of Caribbean Union Bank.
Driven by you, we're better every day. Driven by you, together a brighter way. Caribbean Union Bank, you matter to us. Caribbean Union Bank, our people, our purpose. Every day at Caribbean Union Bank, we are committed to creating the kinds of products and services that you want and need. We are not just a bank. We are your partner on your journey to financial freedom and success. Because we are driven by you. Driven by you, we're better every day. Driven by you, together a brighter way.
The semifinals of the 2024 Intersecondary School Debate Series, brought to you with kind compliments of Caribbean Union Bank. I am your moderator, Priscilla Marsh Sutton. We are very excited to have our studio and television audiences here with us this evening. We promise you a very exciting and informative debate. We have narrowed the pool down to 4 schools for the semifinals. This evening we have with us the Antigua Grammar School and the Antigua Girls High School. They are meeting this evening to debate the moot. The size of contributions made to small island developing states should be based on the level of climate damage caused by developed countries. I will repeat. The size of contributions made to small island developing states should be based on the level of climate damage caused by developed countries. Let's meet the members of both teams. We'll start with the proposition Antigua Grammar School.
Good evening. My name is Tajani Seaman, and I am the first speaker for the Antigua Grammar School.
Good evening. I am Amari John, second speaker of the Antigua Grammar School.
Good evening. My name is Jaden O'Brien, and I am the first alternate speaker for the Antigua Grammar School.
Good evening. My name is Enkin Stevens, and I am the second alternate speaker of the Antigua Grammar School.
A round of applause for the boys. Come on. Let them feel welcome. We're going to have a great debate this evening. It's time for us to meet the ladies of the Antigua Girls High School.
Good evening. My name is Sabrina Burton, and I'm the first speaker for the Antigua Girls High School.
Good evening. My name is Imani Ambrose, and I am the second speaker for the Antigua Girls High School.
Good evening. My name is Janika Adams, and I am the first speaker reserved for the Antigua Girls High School.
Good evening. My name is Keandra Joseph, and I am the second speaker reserved for the Antigua Girls High School.
There you have it, the ladies of the Antigua Girls High School, the ladies in blue. Give them a great big round of applause. As is customary, a panel of judges must adjudicate the competition. This evening with us, Katie Ann Camacho, Education Officer within the Ministry of Education, Asata Roberts, Deputy Head of Campus, Abbott, Jamil Lee, Program Coordinator, UNICEF. A round of applause for our judges. Our alternate judge is Mr. Kadeem Joseph, and as usual, our timekeeper, the lovely Miss Aisha Lynch. We will begin with the proposition's first speaker, Tajani Seaman, followed by the Antigua Girls High School, Sabrina Burton. We will then move on to the second speakers from each team. First speakers will be given 5 minutes for their presentations, and second speakers 3 minutes. The bell will ring once and twice before the allotted time has expired. That should be the bell will ring once at the 1 minute mark and twice when the allotted time has expired. Following the presentations, we'll move on to the rebuttals. In that segment, 3 minutes will be given to each debater. Now that you have the rules and you've met the teams, we're going to take our first break. When we return, don't you dare miss it. The debate begins.
Driven by you, we're better every day. Driven by you, together a brighter way. Caribbean Union Bank, you matter to us. Caribbean Union Bank, our people, our purpose. Every day at Caribbean Union Bank, we are committed to creating the kinds of products and services that you want and need. We are not just a bank. We are your partner on your journey to financial freedom and success because we are driven by you. Driven by you, we're better every day. Driven by you, together a brighter way.
Welcome back to the Intersecondary School Debating Series brought to you with the kind compliments of the Caribbean Union Bank. I'm your moderator, Priscilla Marsh Sutton. If you're just joining us, the Antigua Grammar School and the Antigua Girls High School are meeting in this encounter. And this evening, the moot, they will be debating the size of contributions made to small island developing states should be based on the level of climate damage caused by developed countries. We will now begin the encounter with the proposition. Team Antigua Grammar School, please welcome their first speaker, Tijani Seaman.
Madam Moderator, distinguished judges, worthy opponents, listening and viewing audience, good evening. We convene here today to delineate upon the moot, the size of contributions made to small island developing states, otherwise known as SIDS, should be based on the level of climate damage caused by developed countries. Before we proceed, we must first provide clarity on our key terms. The Oxford English Dictionary defines size as the relative extent of something, level, a position on a scale of amount or quantity, and to contribute, to give something, especially money or goods, to achieve or provide. Damage is a physical harm which impairs the value or regular function of something. Small island developing states, as detailed by the United Nations, are low-lying coastal countries that share similar sustainable development challenges, including small populations, limited resources, remoteness, susceptibility to natural disasters, vulnerability to external shocks, and excessive dependence on international trade. Now that these definitions have been outlined, allow me to present the following points. How the disproportionate impact of climate change is affecting Caribbean countries, the threat posed by ocean acidification to fish stocks and livelihoods in coastal communities across the Caribbean, and the disruption of education systems in SIDS due to climate-related disasters resulting in frequent school closures. While my associate will discuss rising temperatures and changes in precipitation, vulnerability of coastal communities in the Caribbean, and exacerbation of public health challenges. Madam Moderator, I refuse to believe that my opponents are going to say that the size of contributions made to small island developing states should not be based on the level of climate damage caused by developed countries. The disproportionate impact of climate change on Caribbean countries, despite their minimal contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions, necessitates fair and proportional contributions for developed countries to mitigate its effects. The World Economic Forum states that low-income countries produce only 1/10 of emissions, yet these countries are most heavily impacted by climate change. Although these impacts vary greatly between countries, it is a crisis that is deeply unfair with poorer countries, like here in Antigua and Barbuda, disproportionately affected, having fewer resources, but bearing the greater burden in terms of loss of lives and the devastating effect on investments and the economy. Take, for example, the frequency of natural disasters, namely hurricanes. Compared to the 1980s, it is 8 times more in the past 10 years as reported by the World Bank. As a result, Caribbean islands are pushed into hardships and setbacks of developmental achievements. Additionally, coastal erosion, exemplified by cases like Dickinson Bay Beach in Antigua, and the influx of sargassum seaweed severely affect the region's tourism-dependent economies. Secondly, let's consider the threat posed by ocean acidification to fish stocks and livelihoods in coastal communities across the Caribbean. As noted by Sylvia Earle, a renowned marine biologist, ocean acidification is not just an abstract concept. It's a direct threat to the food security and economic stability of coastal communities. The Caribbean relies heavily on fisheries for sustenance and income, yet the acidification of oceans is jeopardizing this vital resource. Fish populations are declining, coral reefs are bleaching, and livelihoods are hanging in the balance. If we continue down this path of inaction, we risk irreparable harm to these communities and ecosystems. Finally, as we look throughout the Caribbean, approaching the hurricane season and looking closer home to Antigua and Barbuda, we have all experienced or witnessed the effects of hurricanes. Schools have been used as shelters, resulting in the disruption of the education system. In 2017 alone, hurricanes imposed significant losses on the education system in not one, but 5 islands across the Caribbean, where we saw destruction of school infrastructure, equipment, and teaching materials. According to UNICEF.org, the damage incurred in the region was 83% in Dominica alone, and the total destruction in Barbuda, where students were unable to attend school. Hence, students from both islands were relocated to Antigua to attend school. This posed a significant burden on already burdened facilities and staff who had to operate under a shift system. In September 2022, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, shared the urgency in making financing for loss and damage a priority at the UN Climate Change Conference. He stated, and I quote, "Grants and concessional financing currently fail to account for the island's unique vulnerability," end of quote. Antigua's Prime Minister, the Honorable Gaston Brown, in his quest to receive tangible financing and grants, urged small island states to be united in their determination to ensure the international community agrees to lasting solutions to challenges facing SIDS. Madam Moderator, honorable judges, I reiterate that the size of contributions made to small island developing states should be based on the level of climate damage caused by developed countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Team Antigua Grammar School. That was Tajani Seaman, and he completed his presentation in a time of 5 minutes and 24 seconds. A round of applause for him. It is now time for the first speaker from the opposition, Team Antigua Girls High School. Please welcome Sabrina Burton.
Madam Moderator, honorable judges, worthy opponents, listening and viewing audiences, good evening. My colleague and I are pleased to oppose this evening's move which states, the size of contributions made to small island developing states should be based on the level of climate damage caused by developed countries. In my presentation, I will address the following points. 1. Climate change is too narrow a basis for contribution to the Caribbean and the need for reparatory justice. 2. Climate compensation will be undermined by confusion debate. 3. Developing countries are some of the biggest emitters of climate change. Finally, my colleague will address climate change by excluding wealthy, low-emitting countries. And finally, the need for a comprehensive multidimensional index. Before delving into our argument, allow me to provide clarity on key terms. The Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines contribution as the giving or supplying of something that plays a significant part in making something happen. The small island developing states are a grouping of developing countries, which are small island countries that tend to share similar sustainable development challenges. Climate damage, or loss and damage, is a general term used in the UN climate negotiations to refer to the consequences of climate change that go beyond what people can adapt to. According to the Oxford Dictionary, a developed country can be defined as a highly industrialized country that has a high per capita. Tonight's MOOC can therefore be restated as the amount of aid given to small islands by first world countries should correlate with the amount of climate damage they have caused. Madam Moderator, we, the opposition, firmly believe that developed countries do, in fact, owe contributions to small island developing states like those in the Caribbean for climate change. However, we argue that this should not be the sole basis for such contributions. Instead, we contend that states like those in the Caribbean need a full-scale package of reparations for centuries of colonial exploitation and deliberate underdevelopment. In other words, true social justice, Madam Moderator, demands more than simply looking at climate change, but a broader view of the reasons for SIDS underdevelopment is necessary. Madam Moderator, for centuries the developed world profited unjustly from the crimes against humanity committed in the plantation economies of the Caribbean and even in the Pacific Islands. Indeed, the Industrial Revolution in countries like Britain, which today is now responsible for climate change, would not have been possible without the enslavement, torture, and brutalization of the African people in the Caribbean. which, despite the vast quantity of wealth to the tunes of trillions of dollars in today's currency, these countries have not paid a single cent to the formerly enslaved peoples and their descendants. Thus, according to Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice Chancellor of the UE in his book Britain's Black Debt, and I quote, former colonies like Jamaica and Barbados would be further ahead in their economic growth and poverty eradication if they had been paid reparations. Instead, they were left to struggle on their own to build out the basic infrastructure for democracy. This is why the reparations movement necessitates looking not at just how much is required to compensate labor, but what is required to promote the development of a democratic society, an economy today out of the rubble of an abandoned colony, end quote. What is needed, Madam Moderator, is not just contribution based on climate change, but reparations for the deliberate underdevelopment and impoverishment of SIDS by the developed world. Secondly, Madam Moderator, we must recognize that to use climate change as the sole basis for contribution would only be undermined by the divisive nature of the climate change debate. Using this as the basis for contribution to SIDS will lead to an uncertainty about the amount of compensation they will receive if any agreement at all can be reached on this. This was the view advanced in a journal titled Nature in an editorial, Loss and Damage. The most controversial words in climate finance today. It stated, and I quote, questions of who will pay and how much, and who will be eligible to receive funding and on what grounds are yet to be answered. Higher income countries would also prefer that only the lowest income countries be eligible for funding, but that would rule out middle income countries, end quote. Finally, Madam Moderator, only asking the developed countries to contribute to SIDS for climate change ignores the stark reality that many developing countries such as China and India are huge emitters of fossil fuels. The question then becomes, why? Why should they be excluded from contributing to SIDS as its moot implies? Were the opponents basing the size of contributions to SIDS only on the developed world's climate change would shrink the amount owed to SIDS drastically. Madam Moderator, China alone contributes over 14 trillion tons of CO2 into the atmosphere and is the world's largest polluter, seconding India, Russia, Brazil, and Mexico. Why should they be excluded? A tentative audience, it cannot be that only the developed countries should contribute to SIDS, surely based on these shocking numbers, the big pollutants in the developing world must contribute as well. Madam Moderator, having eloquently explained the first half of the opposition's case, I now leave the remainder of our argument in the capable hands of my colleague to bring closure to our side. I thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Team Antigua Girls High School, that was Sabrina Burton. She completed her presentation in a time of 5 minutes and 15 seconds. I know you can do better than that. Another round of applause. Thank you very much. We now move on to our second speakers, and we're heading back over to the proposition Team Antigua Grammar School. Please welcome Imari John.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable opponents, today we gather amidst the chaos wrought by the greed and negligence of the developed world. The climate crisis is not some abstract concept. It's a harsh reality that small island developing states in the Caribbean face every single day. As Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados aptly stated, we cannot be idle spectators in the face of this existential threat. We must act, and we must act now. It's time to confront the undeniable truth. The size of contributions to these nations must be proportional to the devastation caused by the industrial juggernauts of the developed world. Anything less is a travesty of justice and a testament to the callousness of those who hold power. As my colleague would have mentioned, I will elaborate on rising temperatures and changes in precipitation patterns, vulnerability of coastal communities in the Caribbean, and exacerbation of public health challenges. Look around you, see the scorched earth, feel the parched throats, and hear the cries of the dispossessed. As our very own Prime Minister Gaston Brown stated, our islands are not simply casualties of bad luck. They are casualties of greed and neglect. The Caribbean grapples with water scarcity, forcing communities to invest exorbitant sums in water management infrastructure just to survive. Evidence from the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center highlights the dire need for financial support and technological assistance to mitigate the impacts of water scarcity exacerbated by climate change. Hurricane Irma, a Category 5 hurricane fueled by warming seas, ravaged the Caribbean in 2017 and left our sister isle Bermuda in pieces. The aftermath of such disasters demands not just sympathy, but concrete actions for those responsible for the climate crisis. Let's take a trip down to the Grace Farm community, whose very existence is threatened by rising sea levels. Prime Minister Andrew Holness of Jamaica emphasizes that this threat is real and is happening now. Coastal communities in the Caribbean are facing the harsh reality of inundation and saltwater erosion. A recent study in the Nature Climate Change revealed that sea levels in the Caribbean have been rising at a rate almost twice the global average. Hurricanes like Maria in 2017 have shown the vulnerability of nations like Puerto Rico and Dominica to the impacts of climate change. Despite these challenges, the resilience of these communities should not only be admired, but also should compel action from those who have contributed the most to their plight. Most egregious of all is the assault on public health in the Caribbean, perpetrated by the actions of a few at the expense of the many. The region is not just a victim of climate change, but a casualty of the insatiable greed of the developed world. As Prime Minister Keith Mitchell of Grenada somberly cautioned, our people are not mere statistics. They are individuals whose lives are in jeopardy. The prevalence of mosquito-borne diseases exacerbated by rising temperatures remains unchecked by those who possess the power to make a difference. So I say to you, esteemed judges and worthy opponents, it's time to rise up in righteous indignation and demand accountability. The size of contributions made to small island developing states must be equal to the level of destruction caused by those who seek to profit at the expense of our planet and its people. Thank you.
Thank you, Imari John. Team Antigua Grammar School, he completed his presentation in a time of 3 minutes and 31 seconds. Come on, a round of applause. We now go over to the ladies in blue. Their second speaker, Imani Ambrose. Please welcome her.
All protocols previously acknowledged. Honorable judges, my colleague has adeptly laid the groundwork for our argument, emphasizing the complexities inherent in attributing climate damage solely to developed countries and advocating for a nuanced approach to contributions to small island developing states, SIDS. Allow me to delve deeper into why some developed countries are low emitters but can contribute to SIDS and the need for multidimensional vulnerability index, MVI, as the basis for contributions. Firstly, honorable judges, it is imperative that we recognize that while some developed countries may be low emitters currently, their historical contributions to climate change simply cannot be overlooked. Factors such as past emissions, intensive cumulative impact, and support for carbon-intensive industries have all contributed to the climate crisis faced by SIDS. According to World Bank in an article entitled, "Among Wealthy Nations, Nordic Countries Are Leading the Pact on Sustainable Development," they stated, and I quote, "Most Nordic countries have relatively low emissions compared to their GDP. Sweden, for instance, has a surprisingly low carbon emission, both absolutely and relative to its GDP, emitting less per capita than any other OECD country except Mexico and Turkey, which are, as I mentioned, still significantly underdeveloped," end quote. Therefore, even low-emitting countries have a responsibility to help vulnerable nations with mitigation and adaptation efforts. Furthermore, they are major contributors to SIDS overseas aids, contributing approximately 20 million USD annually. My worthy opponents, clearly the decision to base contributions on climate damage would adversely affect this assistance, and so this argument is undoubtedly flawed. Finally, the need for an NVI cannot be overstated. We must understand that climate damage goes beyond just environmental factors. They encompass social, economic, and political dimensions as well. By using a comprehensive index that considers vulnerability dimensions like exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity, we can target contributions to address the most urgent needs and build long-term resilience. SIDS advocates for a comprehensive development and financial package addressing vulnerability beyond climate damage. The MVI complements gross national income, GNI, by accounting for human well-being, sustainability, and resilience to shocks like climate change and pandemics. In summary, this approach ensures a holistic basis for contributions, reflecting broader vulnerabilities for SIDS. These contributions may seem excessive, Madam Moderator, but let us heed the words of the great Nelson Mandela, who said, it always seems impossible until it is done. With this plea, Madam Moderator, the opposition rests its case. I thank you.
Thank you, Imani. That was Imani John, Team Antigua Girls High School. She completed her presentation in a time of 3 minutes and 8 seconds. A round of applause for both of our teams. Excellent job. Very big topic, very broad topic. I absolutely enjoyed it. We're going to take our second break. When we return, the rebuttals is next. We'll be right back.
Driven by you, we're better every day. Driven by you, together a brighter way. Caribbean Union Bank, you matter to us. Caribbean Union Bank, our people, our purpose. Every day at Caribbean Union Bank, we are committed to creating the kinds of products and services that you want and need. We are not just a bank. We are your partner on your journey to financial freedom and success. Because we are driven by you. Driven by you, we're better every day. Driven by you, together a brighter way.
Welcome back to the Caribbean Union Bank Intersecondary School Debate Series. It is a pleasure having you join us. And if you're just joining us, the Antigua Grammar School and the Antigua Girls High School are meeting to debate the moot. The size of contributions made to small island developing states should be based on the level of climate damage caused by developed countries. The rebuttal segment is about to begin. We begin with the opposing team, Antigua Girls High School. Each presenter will be given 3 minutes in which to complete their presentation. The bell will ring once at the beginning of the final minute and twice when the maximum allotted time would have expired. It is time for the rebuttal. We're going over to the Antigua Girls High School. Please welcome Imani Ambrose.
Good evening. I stand before you all to reaffirm the opposition's stance on the moot. The proposition had made some good points. However, we were able to highlight and dissect its revealing flaws. Firstly, Madam Moderator, the first speaker has mentioned that hurricane, specifically Hurricane Maria, was a result of global warming. However, to calculate the exact and precise amount of climate damage caused by specific countries would be an extremely tedious task. Secondly, Madam Moderator, again stated by the first speaker, COVID started in the late 2019 and continued into 2020. However, how could COVID have displaced students when, as you stated, that Hurricane Maria happened in 2017? In conclusion, Madam Moderator, the decision to solely base contributions on climate damage would be extremely unfair. I thank you.
Thank you, Imarni. That was Imarni Ambrose Team Antigua Girls High School. She completed her presentation in a time of 1 minute and 1 second. It is now time for the proposing team. Antigua Grammar School, please welcome Imari John.
My worthy opponents, I take note of your points, but still you have failed to convince. Firstly, my worthy opponent, you stated that China and India are major contributors to more than developed countries. Yet, China is indeed a country that is way more developed than us. And as you said, my worthy opponents, they contributed to this crisis. They are more developed than us and are more than capable of compensating for their contribution to this very crisis. Secondly, my worthy opponent, I understand that climate change may be too small of a basis for now, yet see this as a start to the developed countries giving to us. My worthy opponent, I am a Barbadian whose life was shattered due to Hurricane Irma, which was fueled by warming seas. My family was left to cry out to their banks to rebuild the life we once had, and yet you're still here telling me that the developed world shouldn't contribute to third world on the developed countries. So I stand resolute in saying that the developed countries should contribute to small island developing states. Thank you.
Thank you, Imari. Imari John, Team Antigua Grammar School. He completed his presentation in a time of 1 minute and 17 seconds. Round of applause for both of our teams. I think they did an excellent job. Come on, your applause can be bigger. Thank you. Wonderful. They did an excellent job, and that brings us to the end of our first encounter in the semifinal round of the 2024 Caribbean Union Bank Intersecondary School Debate Series. Please show your appreciation again as we take our third break. When we return, the judge's decision.
Driven by you, we're better every day. Driven by you, together a brighter way. Caribbean Union Bank, you matter to us. Caribbean Union Bank, our people, our purpose. Every day at Caribbean Union Bank, we are committed to creating the kinds of products and services that you want and need. We are not just a bank. We are your partner on your journey to financial freedom and success. Because we are driven by you. Driven by you, we're better every day. Driven by you, together a brighter way.
Thank you for staying with us. This is the Caribbean Union Bank Intersecondary School Debate Series. Thank you so much for being here. The Antigua Grammar School and the Antigua Girls High School met in this encounter. The judges have deliberated and tallied their scores to present their findings and announce the winning team. Please welcome Judge Kadian Camacho.
Good evening, one and all. It's my pleasure to bring the judges' comments from the judging panel this evening. We must say congratulations to both teams for putting forward what we consider solid arguments on what I think all of us can agree is a very heavy topic. Please put your hands together for both teams. The topic was well researched by both sides. Local references were very welcomed. Noted, of course, were the regional as well as international sources. So again, congratulations. There were still some areas where the judges believe there is still some need of more work. One of those areas being modulation, voice control, being able to control your prepared speech. We understand as judges that you're given 5 and 3 minutes to make your arguments, but it is still important that you control your speech, ensuring that your audience actually hears the points that you want them to hear. Yes, the points that you're making. Also, it's very important that you make the linkages. Don't just leave it up to the audience to try and figure out how this point actually links right back to the mood. It's very important that those linkages are made and not left up to the audience. Secondly, and I think too this is another point that for each encounter, it's a point that's being made, the rebuttals, the rebuttals, the rebuttals. Much more work is needed in terms of recalling points that were made, recalling them correctly, and of course, countering the arguments or the points that were made. The judges believe that the interpretation and comprehension process seemingly needs work, because we're realizing that it might be a situation that teams are misunderstanding the presentation by the opposing team. So we're not totally understanding the arguments presented, and maybe that's why we're unable to actually counter the arguments presented. That being said, I know you want to hear the marks or the points. So let's get to it. The better debater for the proposition this evening was Mr. Imari John. The better debater for the opposition this evening was Miss Sabrina Burton. The best overall debater this evening, Mr. Imari John. The Antigua Girls High School amassed a total of 72 points. And the Antigua Grammar School with a total of 79 points. We must declare the Antigua Grammar School the winner of this encounter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kadian. That was Judge Kadian Camacho. Congratulations are in order to the Antigua Grammar School, the winners of this encounter, our first encounter in the semifinals. Another round of applause to them. And keep the applause going, of course, to the Antigua Girls High School as well for doing a stellar job this evening. It is time for our closing remarks, and we will hear from the Antigua Girls High School, Sabrina Burton.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate my opponents. You did well, you put up a fair argument, and I commend you for that. Secondly, I'd like to give a warm thanks to my trainers for their hard work and dedication in helping us write the script, practice, and overall putting everything together. My teammates for their support throughout this time, because I know it hasn't been easy with such a heavy topic. And my support system for coming out today and just being there for us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Now for the winning team, please welcome Tajani Seaman.
First of all, I'd like to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for this very opportunity. I'd also like to thank our teachers and everyone who made this possible, the media crew and our devoted researchers. We've had a lot of fun, and truly, my worthy opponents, it has been an incredible debate, absolutely exhilarating in my opinion. We pray for guidance as we continue forward on our path. That's it.
Thank you to Johnny Seaman, the Antigua Grammar School. Wouldn't you agree we had a really informative debate today, didn't we? So I think they deserve another round of applause for facing this challenge and conquering it. Congratulations once more to both of our teams for doing an outstanding job. And thank you to you, our studio and television audiences. The 2024 Caribbean Union Bank Intersecondary School debate continues with the St. Anthony's Secondary School and the Sonovel Richards Academy. Do join us for that encounter. I am your moderator. Until then, stay positive. Bye-bye.